This class will be a very quick one because it's on research ethics, and I'm sure it's quite a boring topic, at least because when you talk about ethics, it's more about the law, the philosophy of ethics. But what I want to highlight is what is directly applicable to you guys while you're doing your research. Okay, so this is our fourth lecture. So time flies. I feel like so in total we have 14 classes. So already lecture 4. So I hope you guys, if you have any problems regarding the previous topics, don't be shy to ask me. I don't mind if you use Malay or English, it's fine. I don't put any restrictions on that because I have received a few questions through WhatsApp and through email. So you guys, you are welcome to ask me anything. If you have problems with your topic as well, because last week I did a short survey and a few of you guys are still having problems with choosing your title. Okay, so if you still have some problem, then you can ask me through WhatsApp individually. Okay, so I don't know if you guys can see the number of slides here. So we only have like 15 slides, very quick one. So as an introduction, so research ethics actually is a concern to researchers, to everyone actually, because not only to researchers, because you yourself as individuals, with your interaction with other people, you always have to be honest, you have to be respectful. Okay, so in the context of research, this is also applicable. So you have to be honest, you have to respect everyone who are affected with your research. Okay, so this means the people closest to you, your colleagues, your friends, your lecturers, your supervisor, and also people who are directly impacted. Okay, so for example, if you're doing any community project, so the community is people that are interrelated to you. So you have to be careful about, you have to apply ethics basically. So people will say, I'm a good person, why do I need to worry about research ethics? Yes, true. We cannot do, we cannot change other people. We can only look at ourselves. Okay, this is a little bit of for us, we have our own moral conduct. Okay, and research ethics is not just about bad people doing bad things. That's what I put there, because it's also about doing something that you know can impact other people, and whether you are okay or not with that. So ethics will give you a direction, about choosing a direction for your own research. Next, so moral foundation. So if we talk about research, okay, fundamentally you are trying to, so for example, is to solve a problem. Okay, so your aim is actually to do good for to achieve a very solution to a lot of problems. So you want to do good for humans, for animals, for environment, okay, for planet. So this relates to the aim of what you are doing. Okay? And you have to be respectful to individuals, you know, and you know, with different individuals, everyone is different socially, economically, their financials, their level of education. Okay, so it is basically your obligations to society. And let's see. Now, the ethical guideline through the pursuit of truth. Okay, so I'm sure that if you watch movies, especially like Western movies, people say a lot in dramas or something when they go to the court, they will say, okay, I swear this is the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So this is a very widespread use of this sentence basically. And this can actually use to guide you, okay? So in particular, if you're talking about research, this one, the truth. So you have to be honest about what you're doing. In your research, what you are doing, you have to be honest. So this applies to while you're doing it and while you're reporting it, which is done while you're doing, for example, your dissertation. Okay, even now when you're doing your proposal, you have to be truthful. Okay, if you do your literature search and you find out something which is contrary to what you know, you have to report that. Okay, the whole truth. So you have to understand that you cannot omit some part of findings. So while you're doing your research, for example, people always say you want to report what's nice, what looks good, what supports your objective, for example. But if you look at true ethics, that is not good actually. So you have to understand that you cannot omit certain things because they are in contrary to what you are saying. Okay, so that's why in research, it doesn't always mean that okay, I do this and I achieve this and you're done. So there are other examples where you set out to do one thing, so your objective is this, and then you do your research and the finding is actually completely different. So you still have to report that. And it doesn't mean that you are failing the research. You don't fail. That is your finding. So there is a significance in that. And that will help you through your discussion while you're discussing the findings. Okay. And the last one, nothing but the truth. So what this means is don't add on. Okay. Don't simply when there's a lot of things happening in the world right now. Okay, so people just add on data, they falsify things. Okay, and the justification is they want to make the result look good. That is one thing, or they have some issues. Okay, they are liable with something, so they change something. So it's not ethically, that is wrong. Okay, that is the baseline, because ethics is something that you do. It guides you, right? But if you don't feel that it is wrong, then you will proceed with that in not only in research but also in other things as well, in your career, in your personal development, right? So we look at very briefly about areas of research ethics, okay, but in the interest of time and also because a lot of this does not really relates to you at this level, okay, so we will only go through the first two. Okay, we have research misconduct. This is what I mentioned before about falsification, fabrication and plagiarism, and a little bit on collaboration issue. Okay, so but this is also not that related, but in the future I think it may be of interest to some of you. Okay, but other than that, yes, we have peer review, we have conflicts of interest or obligation, we have complicity and funding sources. Okay, if you're working with animals, what is the ethics related to that? And also lastly, human subject. Okay, so for the first one, research misconduct, okay, this is a definition by National Science Foundation. So this is actually a US foundation, and they gave a lot of grants, a lot of fundings to researchers mainly in the US, but also in other countries as well. So they define research misconduct as fabrication, falsification, or plagiarism, okay, in proposing or performing research, in reviewing research proposals or literature, or in reporting research results. So it covers everything if you look at that. Even while you're doing your proposal, when you're doing your research, when you're analyzing your data, and lastly, when reporting. So it covers all of that stages. Okay, so research misconduct is possible to happen at any stage. When we talk about fabrication, just to define it further, so you fabricate data. It means you make up data or results, and then you record it, and then you report them. Okay, so it's when you do, for example, your research, you want to add on something, so you falsify data. That is wrong, basically. I'm sure you all know this already, but I just want to reiterate because not we have found, like, in the past, a lot of these examples, okay, in dissertations, in theses, in PhD theses. So it's not only applicable to you guys, but also to everyone, even to us as your lecturers, as researchers. We are, facing this, like, everywhere. So I just want to highlight this. And then falsification. Okay, so you manipulate research materials, the equipments, or processes. Okay, and sometimes you omit certain data, certain results, so that what I always heard is that when you do some research and you have a graph, you plot everything there, and then you see some points which goes out of the expected line, and you omit that. So that is actually falsification. Okay, unless it's you could always leave it there and report that as errors. Okay, errors, it doesn't mean that you cannot do anything wrong in your research. You just have to be able to explain, okay, this happens because there's an error with the equipment, for example. Okay, so that means you acknowledge that errors happen, yeah, and you don't just omit certain points just to make sure that, okay, everything looks nice. So that's not the way to go about it. So last one is plagiarism. Okay, plagiarism is a very, very big issue because a lot of the time what happened is, it's okay to use the sources that you found. Okay, for example, articles in the internet, the literature that you found, okay, using all the available database. But it's not okay to just copy paste everything and then claim it as your own work. Okay, because that is plagiarism. You have to, whatever you cite from other people, you have to refer to them, because basically it's not your own words or your own findings. So you have to give references. Okay, and even then, you cannot copy word by word, because that is total plagiarism. So what people usually do is so layman term, you copy paste everything and then you rearrange certain words, the sentences, you rearrange that, okay, and that makes it your own word. And then you still need to put in the reference, because basically, yes, you say that, but it's not actually what you're doing. Okay, you do have some reference to that. Okay, so this is what they mean. Research misconduct does not include honest error or differences in opinion. So that's fine. If you have errors, if you try to discuss on certain things, it's okay to have differences in opinion with the findings or the literature that you refer. That is fine. So for example, research misconduct. So just to show you like what are the examples, okay? Image manipulation. I will show you an example after this regarding this data fabrication, falsification. We've talked about this one. Data omission and suppression, that one as well. Then yes, plagiarism, okay, work of others or ideas, you know, and meant by ideas from peer review process is, so this actually is for you guys who want to further your studies, okay? Or even now when you're, I'm sure later on when you are working with your supervisor, okay, for FYP, your supervisor is going to ask you to write, okay, an article for journals, for example. And so the process with journals, you write them, and then when it's finished, you will send it to the publishers. So during the publisher, at the publisher stage, they will do some peer review, okay? Peer review here means they will look at what you have written, and then this will be experts in the field, okay, something like your supervisor, but in other institutions. So these people will look at your writing and then they will say, okay, this is quite a good write-up, okay, and they will pass it. But what happens is sometimes people just say, this is not an acceptable writing or write-up, and then they tell the publisher, okay, don't publish this. Okay, for example, I'm not saying this might happen, but what happened is actually they think it's good. So they didn't want you to publish it, but they want to publish it themselves. Okay, this is why it is a big ethical issue, because people who are doing peer review should be independent. They are not supposed to copy your ideas or, you know, use it as their own. So it's not really applicable to you guys, but it might happen to you. You might become the victims. Okay, so just highlighting that. But don't worry, it should be, usually it works, the system works. So because there's not only one peer reviewer, there's a lot of others as well. Right. Now, error and fraud. So I mentioned error before, okay? So it's important to distinguish between these two, okay? Because when you look at error, I'm sure that even when you are in high school, when you have to do your lab report, there's always, I don't know if this is still true, but in my time, we do that. So for physics or chemistry, for example, you do the lab and then you make your report. There's always one section where there is error, okay? So error is, you know, unintentional mistakes actually, or omission in data and in reporting. So the keyword there is unintentional, okay? Whereas in fraud, okay, the same thing might happen. You might okay, omit certain data points like I mentioned before, but you do it intentionally. So intent is the primary difference, okay, between error and fraud. So like for us who are a Muslim, we are talking about niat, okay? So if you have good intention, that is something that is ethically correct as well, okay? But if you you have a conscious intention to do bad, then that is, you know, actually wrong. Okay. So these are some examples, okay? So for this one, they want to correct the image. So they copy paste some portion of the image, okay, and then they copy and paste. So that's ethically wrong, and people found out. And you know what happened to the people who are involved. They are very ashamed. Some of them have to resign from their posts because this is not low level research. This is a very famous researchers, okay, and even then they did this. So ethics is a really important thing, you know. If you want to do good things, and you do good even though it's really hard, okay. But if you want to do bad, then usually the bad things are easier to do, you know. um, Image manipulation, yes, a lot of them do image manipulation. And then there's one article, okay, this is fairly recent because it was released like very early during COVID-19 pandemic when it started. So this one, so the Lancet is actually a very high profile medical publication, okay, and that's what makes it so high profile, because this paper got through, okay, and actually it has issues on their data integrity and analysis. So a lot of people, I think there was about 17,000 people who, you know, submitted their signatures to the Lancet saying that this is highly controversial, you have to look more into it. So you know, the process is there, okay. Even people who are readers might be able to detect something is wrong with this, okay. And eventually this paper was retracted. So just to say that these things do happen in real life, okay. Now the next one, safeguards against fraud, okay. So this is basically what the system are in place with to safeguard against fraud or fraudulent activities. So, for example, this is talking about when you send an article for publication, okay? But it also is applicable to you guys, because when you submit your proposal, when you submit your dissertation, okay, not only your supervisor will read it, but also the assessors, okay. So assessor is actually the peer review, if you want to look at it that way, okay. So while you're writing up, okay, your proposal and also your dissertation later on, you have to consider what you are reporting, okay. If there is any fraudulent activities in there, there are the peer review process in place. So it's something to deter, you know, basically misconduct. And next is replication. Okay, so replication, okay, this might, well, in the long term, it should be something that we can do as well. Okay, so replication is repetition of a research study using the same basic procedures. Okay, so especially in our department, okay, and I think even in our faculty, I think a lot of research that we do is something that we can do again, not by you guys, but by the people after you, or the students that your supervisor has, okay. So the replication can be done to make sure that your results can be replicated, okay. And that means it is true, okay. It's not fraudulent, okay. There's no funny business going around behind the scene. So the next one is plagiarism, right? So this is what I said earlier. You can literally copy an entire paper word for word and present it as your own work, okay. or you can copy and paste passages from articles and sites found on the internet. Okay, it is possible. The thing is, you are now a university student, and next you are going to be workers. You are going to join the work industry. So what it's meant for you to do, especially while you're doing dissertation and research, is actually to help train you, okay? Because while doing research, yes, it's hard. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of uncertainties. But basically, the way you handle that is going to train you as an individual, and especially next into the working industry, then you will find that, okay, there's a lot of unknowns there as well. Okay, there will be times when you have to be on your own, okay, and conduct a project, for example, and you will look back, okay, thank God I did my research, because that's how I know how to manage myself. Okay, so along the road, so you have to take this dissertation and research as something that will help you grow, basically. Okay, there's a lot of challenges, yes, especially nowadays in the COVID-19 era, but we have to make do. Okay? So this is one of the high-profile cases regarding plagiarism. Okay, the Hungarian president resigns after plagiarism accusation. Okay, so he is actually a PhD holder. I can't remember from which university. Okay, but it's in Hungary. And he became the president, and then 20 years after he got his PhD, someone found out that his PhD, the thesis of his PhD, some of them was plagiarized from other sources. Okay, so you can imagine 20 years after you've submitted something, people dug that out and found out that you are plagiarizing something. Can you imagine the humiliation that he felt? But then that's the thing. It's a lot of people say, well, plagiarism is nothing, but you have to look at it this way. If in 20 years you become someone, you become somebody, people will try to dig out information on you, right? And at that time, you have a lot of things to lose already. So why not we do everything by the book, even from the very beginning, okay? And that way, people try to duck everything, they won't find anything, because you are basically, you have good conduct, you do everything by the book, you follow the rules, okay? People might say everyone else does that, but to me, well, personally, I would say don't look at other people. Okay, you start with yourself. So if you want to do good, then do good. Okay, don't compare with what other people are doing, basically. Okay, the next one is collaboration issue. Okay, this is number 2. So collaboration issue is not does not relate too much to you guys, but I just want to highlight, because what you will be doing next with your supervisor is sort of a collaboration as well, because what you are doing research, you will have your own findings, and like I said before, doing research is challenging. So whatever you find, whatever data you have, those are yours, right? So when you are involved in collaborations, some issues might happen. So with authorship, intellectual properties. So of course, this one would not always be related to you guys, because this is usually a longer term research where you find really, really significant data, and then you can publish something out of that, or you can apply for patents, something like that. Okay, but of course, it also relates to while you're doing experiments as well, because a lot of the times we tend to forget that, you know, even for me, for example, as a lecturer, as a supervisor, I might push my students too hard, okay, and at the same time I have to remember that, okay, you guys are undergraduates, there's only so much time you can spend on doing your research, okay, that's on my side. But at the same time, I will also have some expectation of my students, okay, and this is how collaboration works. So you have to come to an agreement, okay, both sides have to agree. And my way of thinking about that is both sides have to put in enough effort, okay, in supervisors. So supervisors have to supervise, the students have to perform, okay, but it shouldn't be distorted in a way, okay, so both have to achieve the same level of hard work. Okay, areas. So this is just continuing from before. So we've covered 1 and 2. So for 3 and 7, I just give some examples just to give you an idea, but it's not, usually it doesn't affect you guys at this level, okay, unless if you want to continue on after this, maybe doing your master's or PhD, this might be more related to you guys. So like I said, peer review process, yes, you copy, not you, maybe you or other people who are doing the peer review, copying the ideas, okay, while peer review, that is an ethical issue. And then you have a conflicts of interest, obligation, okay. This is usually highly dramatized in movies or films, with people bribing, that's one thing. Or if you yourself has a product, so you have your own brand, and at the same time you do your research and then you omitted certain findings from that research, okay, so that is also a problem, okay. Next is complicity and funding sources, okay. This is usually ethical issues related to certain fields, okay. I don't know if you are familiar with stem cell research, but in stem cell research, a lot of ethical issues arise because people are talking about, stem cell research save lives, but at the same time, the stem cell is something that is in only can be extracted from live human beings, and then it's from your backbone, okay. So it's painful, it's a painful process, it's so there's a lot of ethical issues there. Are you saving lives by hurting other people, or is that justifiable because you're saving lives, okay. So that's some ethical discussion going on there, as well as genetic manipulations. Of course, there are not only ethical issues, also religious issues sometimes with genetic manipulations. Okay, so it's hard to say who's wrong, who's right. You have to follow your own individual and ethical and religion base, basically. Next is animal subject research. Okay, 3 R's. So they also use 3 R's. They want to refine, reuse, replace. Refine here means when you're dealing with animal, you want to refine the conditions, okay, not to have them suffer, and then reuse whatever is possible, okay, so that you can reduce the number of animals being used. And then you try to replace the higher level animals with lower levels. So for example, instead of using monkeys, okay, they use rats, for example. Okay, so that's how they replace it. And lastly, human subject research. There is a code related to this, a Nuremberg code. Nuremberg Code if you are interested. But it's good. The next one, okay, this is just to highlight something that is directly applicable to you guys. So in reporting of research, you have to think about not fabricating data. Okay, don't make any false, deceptive, or fraudulent statements. So this refers to your research and also the research findings while reporting that and presenting. Okay. So if you discover significant errors, okay, you take reasonable steps to correct the errors. Okay. Sometimes it's possible to say, like what I mentioned earlier in the course, you just say, okay, there is some error here and there, okay, and what is the originating of that, okay, so possibly human error or equipment error, something like that. But don't change the data. That's the key takeaway. And lastly, they do not present portions of another's work or data as their own. Okay? Avoid plagiarism, basically. That's the bottom line. So for conclusion, you must actually think about the ethical components of what you do, okay? Because as I mentioned earlier, sorry if it goes a little bit to, sermon or, nagging or something, but it's not. It's basically you have to think about what you're doing. Justify if it's good. If you want to do good, then do good. If you want to do bad, think about it. What are the consequences to yourself and also to others? Okay, so learning about research ethics, it cannot motivate you to want to do the right thing. That's true because it's basically what's in you. Okay, how you think about doing things. But it will give you more tools to think about difficult situations in the future. Okay, imagine now you're only doing research, you know, a very quick research, something like 4 to 6 months. But in the future, when you are in the workforce, okay, there's a lot of projects, for example, and there will be a lot of opportunities there as well. So think. That's what I think I said this like every lecture. Think about what you're doing, what are the consequences. Okay.